Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another one of our virtual Zoom lectures here. My name is Mark Rossetti Jr. I'm the Director of Operations and Programs for the Luzerne County Historical Society, and this is part of our ongoing programming that we have through a series of grants from the Pennsylvania Humanities Council, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and Luzerne County through the CARES Act as part of our continuing digitization and virtual outreach to our membership due to the coronavirus pandemic, which hopefully we're starting to come out of the other end of. We've started to do a few live action things, and we have a few more things scheduled for later in the summer, but we're going to continue on with the virtual programming this month and next month. This month, we're going to be talking about Frances Dorrance, a very wonderful woman who was the very first executive director of the Historical Society, so we're a little biased. And to take us through the presentation here today, we have a former president of the Luzerne County Historical Society, former board president, Tish McCarthy Last, who retired a few years ago as the major gifts officer at King's College, and she did a lot of grant writing and things there. And she's been off and on the board quite a bit just in my 15 years here, much less I don't even know before that. I know she's had a couple of different terms here. So she's a great friend of the society, great benefactor of the society, and we are thrilled to have her present today. So Tish, I'm going to turn on the share screen, and when it's up, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mark. And before I begin, and let me know when we have the share screen going. Before we begin, okay, I do want to thank our society staff, Mary, Mark, and Allie, for their help in putting this paper together. Could not have done it without them. I also want to thank John Sardoni, a local Native American enthusiast, and also John Schaefer of Wyoming Seminary, who provided me some valuable information for our topic this evening. The Luzerne County Historical Society celebrated its 163rd birthday earlier this year. Over that 163 years, the society has had quite the run of leaders. However, one person truly stands out. The first executive director of the society, Frances Dorrance, was a remarkable woman. Her fingerprints remain to this day, not just on our historical society, but on several other Pennsylvania institutions as well. We are proud to share her story. Frances Dorrance was born in Wilkes-Barre on June 30th, 1877, to Benjamin and Ruth Woodhull Strong Dorrance. Frances was raised on a farm in Wyoming Valley, which she attributed to her robust health and longevity. The farm's original plot of 400 acres, stretching between the Susquehanna River and the mountains, was settled by her great-great-grandfather when he came to the valley to work with the Susquehanna Company. He was killed on July 3rd, 1778, in the Battle of Wyoming. Frances was a graduate of Wyoming Seminary, class of 1896, and a cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Vassar College, class of 1900. During her college career, Frances Dorrance studied in Berlin, Germany. Imagine what an adventure that must have been for a young girl at the turn of the century. She continued her academic pursuits at Columbia University, the Marine Biological Laboratory of Massachusetts, and received a degree from the New York School of Library Science at Albany, New York. At one time, she was head of the circulation department of the Trenton Public Library and later at the Osterhout Free Library. Her abilities were recognized in 1914 when the University of Wisconsin and Cornell University entrusted her with the translation from German to English of the basic reference books on plant and anatomy, pathology and disease. Christopher Wren, the corresponding secretary and librarian for the Wyoming Historical and Geological Society, now known as the Luzerne County Historical Society, died in 1922. On November 1st of that year, Frances Dorrance was appointed as Christopher Wren's replacement, eventually with the title of executive director, and immediately went to work. Colonel Dorrance Reynolds, the society's board president at the time, wrote in the 1922 President's Report that, quote, "You could not have found a more qualified or abler person or one more interested in our work than Frances Dorrance. Francis pushed for history education by experimenting with open hours to increase availability to the public and designed programs to engage children. In 1923, she initiated a survey of Native American rock shelters in the Wyoming Valley with archaeologist Max Schrabisch. She summed up the mission of the survey in the 1926 Wyoming Historical and Geological Proceedings as follows. Quote, "The necessity for haste in making field investigations for the survey is evident from the destruction in the Wyoming Valley. Great stretches of the state, still untouched by the advances of civilization, lie ready to give up their pieces of evidence of Indian occupation for the digging. At present, less is known of the prehistory of Pennsylvania than any other state in the Union." End quote. Francis began the Indian Site Survey in March 1924. Described as an exploring expedition on paper, the survey was sent to museums, historical societies, and local authorities throughout Eastern Pennsylvania. The purpose was threefold: to research written records of Native Americans, to preserve and arrange Native American collections for future generations, and to make an initial effort to preserve the surviving remains of Native Americans and scientifically study them. An astounding 1,900 responses to the site survey showed that there was a larger interest in the archaeology of Pennsylvania than ever imagined. Francis envisioned excavation of the sites under the direction of trained archaeologists. She sent a letter to those who had responded to the site survey, asking them to participate in organizing the Pennsylvania State Archaeological Society. Because of her knowledge, leadership, and organizational skills, the local chapter of the Pennsylvania Archaeological Society is named for her. The local society also established the Francis Dorrance Award, which is awarded annually to the chapter that has recorded the most archaeological sites within a year. In 1925, Francis corresponded extensively with a gentleman who collected Native American artifacts, which he acquired while working for the United States Weather Bureau in North Dakota. The artifacts represented several tribes, but primarily the Sioux Indians. Among his collection was the regalia of the Sioux Indian chief Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull gave his complete outfit to General Thomas, an Indian agent in Oklahoma in 1890, just months before the chief was killed. The headband is made of white beads with green beading along the front. On each side of the headdress are 7 ermine suspensions, each about a foot long. The headdress and the 10-foot-long train are made of red trade cloth. The shirt is made of either elk or deer skin with brass buttons. 2 necklaces are part of the costume, which are made of horse or elk teeth with large blue spacers. Other trappings include a colorful apron, beaded moccasins, and leggings made of elk or deer hide. With board approval, Francis purchased the entire outfit for $500, which translates into a mere $7,630 in today's equivalent purchasing power. She also commissioned a statue of Sitting Bull from U.S.J. Dunbar of Washington, D.C., who was a sculptor with the Smithsonian. In those days, the Historical Society's collection was much broader and less locally focused. The regalia of Chief Sitting Bull remains arguably our most popular collection piece to this day. Francis's work and influence didn't just stop at the county line, however. When the Pennsylvania Historical Institute was formed in 1927 to promote local history, Francis Dorrance was appointed the organization's first vice president. She also appealed to the state to form an archaeological commission. Instead, she was appointed to the State Historical Commission and then formed an archaeology committee to which she was appointed. Clearly, this Luzerne County woman was highly regarded. Likewise, when the Pennsylvania Historic Museum Commission was founded in 1913 to mark historic places and events and to preserve Pennsylvania's history, Francis was named a commissioner. While serving in that role, She gathered materials to research the Sullivan Expedition, an extended systematic military campaign conducted by the United States during the American Revolution against Loyalists and 4 Native American nations. Frances's invaluable work started the Commission's research collection. She continued to serve on the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission until 1955. Frances was also crucial in the planning of the Hoyt Library and became the first head librarian in 1938 when she resigned from our Historical Society. She was head librarian at the Hoyt until she retired in 1952. According to an article published in the Times Leader on May 30, 1963, Friends of the Hoyt Library established an honorary fund during a capital campaign to pay tribute to Frances and to provide Wyoming Valley with an opportunity to honor one of its most distinguished citizens. The fund was used for special purchases and was supported by many, including the library staff, as a mark of their esteem and warm affection. In 1956, the Kingston Post of the American Legion presented Frances with its Distinguished Service Citation for her outstanding contribution to our community, thereby becoming the first woman in the United States to receive an American Legion citation. Frances was an active community volunteer. Her interests included her church, which was the First Presbyterian Church of Wilkes-Barre, hospital auxiliaries, the Back Mountain Memorial Library, the Fine Arts Fiesta, and the United Nations Association of Wyoming Valley. She had a keen interest in the annual program at the Wyoming Monument, sponsored by the Wyoming Commemorative Association, of which her grandfather was the first president. Her father, attorney Benjamin Dorrance, and her sister Ann Dorrance were both past presidents as well. Other honors Frances Dorrance received included the honor of being selected a Distinguished Daughter of Pennsylvania in 1952, the first person to be awarded the J. Alden Mason Award by the Pennsylvania Society of Archaeology in 1970, and she was one of 5 recipients to receive Wyoming Seminary's first Distinguished Service Award in 1973. On the occasion of Frances's 90th birthday, the Wilkes-Barre Record published an article describing her as a gentle, cultured woman of ageless spirit. To celebrate this momentous birthday, she planned a trip to Nantucket. We have a photo of Frances relaxing on a porch on Wawinnet, a lovely rustic section of Nantucket Island. The photo notes that she is with her friend Annette, who we assume is Wilkes-Barre native and Fine Arts Fiesta co-founder Annette Evans. Frances spent her final years in an apartment on Foster Street in Dallas, across from the Dallas Methodist Church, with her dog Lady, a canine of unknown ancestry. She received an endless procession of youngsters in her final years. Through them, she learned their music and dance styles of the 1960s and early 70s. Frances Dorrance died in 1973 at age 95, after a life's work spent preserving the rich history of both Luzerne County and the Commonwealth at large. Thank you.
Well, that was very good. Thank you, Tish. Stop the share there. And then turn my camera.
Do we have any questions?
Yes, if we have any questions, you can certainly type them in the text chat and they will come to me directly and then I can feed them through to Tish. So we can get that going. Set up here. Yeah, we're good there. Well, I suppose I have one for you, Tish. What do you think was the most interesting facet of Frances Dorrance that you learned about? Because I know you've done a ton of research for this. You've been, you know, I've seen the emails going back and forth. You've been looking at different photos, different notes and things. What fascinated you the most about what you found?
Actually, I have to say that I am incredibly impressed and in awe of this woman who was born in the 19th century and went on to study at an Ivy League school and accomplish all the things that she did at the turn of the century. And including the fact that she went to Berlin, Germany to translate from German into English. I wish that I had known her. So that was one of the many things that I was impressed. And then today I learned more that maybe I'd like to ask Mark, if you could tell us about her relationship, quote unquote, with FDR.
Yeah, I could speak a little bit on that. As we know, with the whole acquisition of Sitting Bull and a few other of the large, well, not necessarily large, but decent sized collections we have here at the society that she took on as executive director. She loved to write. She loved to write letters. Of course, that was the main correspondence medium at the time, and she was a very active letter writer. So not long after the Depression started, Hoover is voted out of office. FDR takes over. He begins a lot of different projects. They called them the alphabet laws, the WPA, the CCC. Social Security was another one of them, but basically a bunch of different laws to stimulate the economy. And the WPA in particular, the Works Progress Administration, was about literally getting people back to work. And these would often just be civil service projects. I mean, the big one around here that everybody remembers was that little brick wall that ran along River Street, all along the River Common. And it wasn't very high, wouldn't have done anything in a flood. And I personally never found it that attractive, but that wasn't the point. The point was it put people back to work. Go build a wall, the government will pay you, you'll have a job, you'll have money, you can then put the money back into the economy and you'll stimulate it. Well, these projects took place all over the country, and the bulk of them were very labor intensive. The most famous one, even though it was early, it was a little bit earlier than FDR, but it was the Hoover Dam. That was a stimulate the economy project. So Francis Dorrance wrote a letter to FDR, because you could still write the president back then, and said, this is all very fine and dandy, and I think the work you're doing is wonderful, but what about the educators? What about the librarians, the teachers, the people who can't do physical labor? We're struggling just as much as anyone else is. We need work to do too. And at first, FDR just didn't really ignore her, but he just kind of rebuffed her and was like, yeah, we'll get to that. He had other big problems. But as we found out tonight, Frances Dorrance was a determined woman, and she wasn't just going to take a shooing very lightly. So she continued to correspond with the president. And finally, she convinced him that there needed to be some WPA projects for educators. And the big one that affected us personally at the Historical Society was there was a cemetery survey that was done. It was mostly teachers and librarians, and they would go out to the local cemeteries here in the area and the county and just literally get a pen and paper and write down everything on every grave. Start at grave 1, row 1, write down the name of who's buried there, date of birth, date of death, whatever epitaph it says, boom, move on to the second one, boom, boom, boom. Do every cemetery, log 8 hours a day, record your results, government will pay you. And because of that, that is where a good chunk of our cemetery records, we have a big card catalog of just all headstone listings. And it's not complete, but it is a very large chunk of the county. And the bulk of that collection came from this survey in the 30s due to Frances Dorrance. And they were doing similar ones across the country. That was just a big local one. So she was a pretty remarkable woman, in that she was able to hook the president at the time too, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, if we have no other questions, I think we can wrap up. I do want to throw in one shameless plug. Our next Zoom lecture is going to be next month, Thursday, June 24th. It's going to be Dr. William Lewis. He's going to be doing the historiography of the Battle of Wyoming, which historiography is literally the history of history. So he's going to be telling us all about how the story of the Battle of Wyoming evolved through the years as it was taught in classes and, through the media and different things. And that's going to be a good little appetite whetter for the Wyoming Commemorative Association, which will be on July 3rd this year. We're going to get to do it this year. Thankfully, it's going to be socially distanced, but we're going to get to do it again, and we're very excited about that. So that'll get you set for the 3rd. So join us 7 o'clock on June 24th for the next Zoom lecture. And as we said, this one is being recorded, so this one will be up on YouTube hopefully by this weekend. And likewise, Dr. Lewis's lecture will also be on YouTube once we do that. So I think that is all she wrote, as they say. Any final thoughts, Tish?
Thank you for the opportunity to present a paper on Frances Dorrance. She's truly was a remarkable woman.
Well, thank you for doing it. I know you put in a lot of time and effort. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. And I know our members are going to eat this up once we get it online. So thank you again and have a good weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.